Welcome back to Timo's Dinky Detailing. Today I'm going to have on my bench a Dinky 29C double-deck bus, or as I used to call it, a double-decker bus, but the official name on the box for these things is a double-deck bus. So this one, they made this toy from 1938 all the way to like somewhere around 1958, a very similar bus. This particular one, there were different versions, and when you look at this one, it has these fenders on the front, or mud guards, that are creeping over the front of the wheels, and obviously this one's taken some damage because they're sticking out like that. But this is a way of identifying this particular toy, especially since the only one that was done with that particular design of bus, with those fenders that point down and stick out, is the very first edition in 1938. So this one, it's pretty obvious because afterwards they made all different versions of this bus, but the fenders had a line straight across, so they had more support. So let's have a closer look at this one. You can see that most of it is in good shape except for those front fenders. They were obviously a problem. They were sticking out and hanging down, and in the toy box they would get bent in as they are here, and even broken off on the other side. And this is probably why they changed it. Now this front grille with the V at the top indicates that it is probably an AEC Regent 3RT bus, which was introduced in 1939, and it was later replaced by the AEC Routemaster. AEC stands for Associated Equipment Company, which at that time and later made most of the Routemaster buses as well. So at this time, Dinky was making all sorts of different types of model with a different type of base. This one has a cast base, and it's not held on with rivets like later ones, or with any locking mechanism. It just has 3 rectangular slots, and there's like a mortise and tenon. And this one only has one of them left. The others one has broken off completely, and the other one has come loose and lost its head. So I grind just the one and coax it off of there, and immediately presents a problem. How am I going to put this thing back together again? Because you can't. It's not a traditional way that it's an earlier way of doing it, but they didn't pursue this later on. They pursued the other methods with the round rivets. Now I'm not going to be reusing these axles anyway, because once you get that flattened part off the end, that's the old style where they crimp the axles. They're nice and easy to make, but you can't save the axle. So I'm just cutting them off, and I'm going to have to replace them with a replacement axle. You can see the crimped end. There was one tire, and like usual, they're dried and they just crack when you try to take them off. So I'll have to replace all of those. So first thing, I want to try and bend out as much of these front fenders as possible. It's important to me because this is a very distinctive part of this particular toy, because it was the first one, and they made several different versions, slightly different types of fenders, and this was only on the very first one, and probably, I mean, it's very attractive, but it doesn't stand up well to a toolbox or to general play, a child playing with these things. So I got that floor bent up straight, and time to strip the paint. So it goes into the plastic bucket, and I go outside, boiling water and caustic soda. Still looking for a paint stripper that they sell in Canada that's going to do a job anyway halfway near what the caustic soda does. So I spent a lot of time trying to get the front fender. Here I'm putting a coating of, I put super glue and then some baking soda on there, and I'm strengthening the crack that was in that fender. I heated it up and hammered it and bent it. In the end, it's going to have to be rebuilt. So I couldn't bend it out so that it would be perfect curve, so I just grind off the excess underneath and have the curve as made from the super glue and the baking soda, and that seems like a better angle. So here I've put the glue on a piece of tape so that it projects out where it's supposed to be. So that's a nice little technique, because you can't, to try and build that up a little layer at a time would take forever. So I made a little scoop out of tape, and it worked out really, really well. So the rest of this casting, I straightened out that floor, obviously bent in the corner because in a toolbox, in a toy box, it's going to be getting a lot of pressure from all the other toys on top of it, or if it gets dropped or stepped on, that's the part that's obviously going to bend. So after doing the super glue and baking soda, I put a little bit of Bondo spot and glaze putty. And I cleaned up the casting in various places, try and make it look a little bit cleaner. Now for attaching the base, I have to do it in this early stage. Decided I'm going to put a little block of aluminum across the body and have a hole in it and be able to put a screw in it. This way I'll be able to take the model apart in the future or even during the construction. Many times I find I want to dry assemble it and then take it apart again to do some other work on it. So there's ridges inside and on the inside of the body to strengthen it. So I'm matching this part with a ridge, so that, or with a notch, so that it'll fit into the ridge. Because I need this thing to go across so that it matches the hole in the base. Now the hole in the base is interesting. It's too large obviously for a screw. I believe this hole was used for some kind of clamp. Many toys have this circle, and I'm going to investigate it a little more, and maybe I'll have a special episode on it. But so here I'm just taking that little block. I'm running out of Cool Tool. I'll have to get some more tapping compound. I'm tapping it for a 440 screw as I usually do, and I will put a button head 440 cap screw like on all my other Dinky toys. So it won't look too suspicious to somebody taking a close look, because they'll think that's how it was assembled originally. So there, I've test fitting it. It's pressed in there. And by tightening it in, I pull the thing up to the exact right level that it needs to be at. And then I can glue it in. I filed a little bevel on the end so that when I put the super glue on it and then put the baking soda, it's going to fit into that little wedge without sticking up. And it does stick up anyway, but I file it off so that it's flat. But the idea is that it won't allow that bar to move when, at least, you know, a certain amount of pressure, it's going to resist it. So into the spray booth goes all these parts. And this looks to me like I put Tamiya white primer, and this is a spray bomb. That was a miracle I found it. Somebody told me I should paint the whole thing red because they never had a two-tone bus. But then I was in a store, they had a sale on some paints that nobody wanted, and they had this exact color which is perfect for this model. So I bought it for a good $5-6 cheaper than another spray bomb, and I didn't have to mix up that color. So I was kind of pleased with that. So now I'm taping it to the same line where the original paint was, so that the bottom part will be red and the top part will be yellow. And it's that yellow color that is just right for this model. So this is always an exciting time, taking off the tape. I didn't really get much bleed through, but because of the rough nature of the casting, I didn't get a perfectly clean line. And I would have had to grind away a lot of the bodywork in order to get a perfect line. So I touch it up a little bit later on. So the wheels are going to get black, which is what it came with and what most of the models were painted. And it also matches the original bus. They usually had black wheels. Now for replacement wheels, I'm using my O-rings that I've been using for some time now, and I link to them below. They're very useful and they match beautifully the normal Dinky toy tires. The paint I put on those wheels is semi-gloss, so they're not really shiny, and I think it works well in this application because it's a commercial vehicle. It's not somebody's sedan where they're going to want to polish up the wheel covers. So I think it looks good. Now for axles, I'm taking, these are aluminum pop rivets, and to get the riveting part off and just take the shaft, use a pair of pliers. Then I'm taking off, I could have used a longer pop rivet, but there's a little crimping on those things, and that's going to be hidden anyway, so I use a shorter rivet and save my long rivets for bigger toys. So now I'm filing a curve on the end, so when I crimp it, it's going to look like the original axles when they're crimped. This is a pair of locking pliers that I bought. They're Milwaukee ones because those are supposed to be the easiest ones to open after you've squeezed it tight like this. I had a pair of real vice grips, but they tended to throw the toy around when you tried to release it. So these are a little bit easier to release. And there's my ground down pliers. I took the head off this one after putting the crimp on the other end. I guess you could do it either way, although I kind of did it by accident, but it works out fine. It's a nice design of toy, the way the wheels, the axles go through and the wheels fit inside those fender wells. I really like that design. And of course this bus lends itself to doing this. You can't do it on just any toy. So there I've crimped it down off camera, and now I'm trying to release it as gently as possible. There, and it always pops like that, but this one, these pliers, as I said, Milwaukee, they seem to not pop quite so harshly as the genuine vice grip ones. I kind of like this method of making axles, but it really only applies to the early Dinky toys. And this one had crimps on both ends. Later toys had a mushroom on one end, and they would just crimp the other end in the factory, so at least one side looked like a normal mushroom. So this one has the crimps on both sides, so I did crimps on both sides. So it looks like the original. So here with the paint and that bar, I can put the base back, and then it's one screw. And fortunately this design, it doesn't need any other alignment. It's form-fitting with those fenders matching the body. So a little bit of detailing, Just doing the front grille and the headlights. There's nothing else that I could tell that was decorated on this toy. They got advertisement decorations on them in later years, but the early ones did not have anything. They were just a plain two-colored toy. Very simple, plain model, but that's as it was in the early days of Dinky. So here's just to remind you of what I started out with. Rough toy. Let's see what it looks like now. So this was kind of a eye-opener for me, because when you see that bus in its original, or in its rough condition as original the way I got it, you wonder, why would this be a toy that some child would want? But once it's painted up with a fresh coat of paint, new tires and new axles, it's a very pretty toy. And I think a child would just love to have this toy. So this was a very straight up restoration. I like doing some of these now, and I like them more and more, but I also do like doing the fancier customizations. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Timo's Dinky Detailing. Until next time, be seeing you.